The Americans actually had great influence on the East Indian subcontinent, contrary to what we have been taught. There were numerous groups in the Americas that sailed the sea in ancient times, similar to the Polynesians and other Pacific Islanders. Americans sailed to Southeast Asia, Sri Lanka, and India thousands of years ago, trading crops, gold, animals, and slaves. American societies eventually diffused their culture and religion into East Indian society. At least two distinct American societies made contact with East India, the Mayas, and the nation of Israel under Solomon. The Mayans gave to the East Indians the Pythagorean theorem, algebra, and the concept of the number zero. With this, they gave them the knowledge of the architecture of building pyramids, though it may have been the Aztecs to be the ones to bring to East India the knowledge of building the pyramids, because pyramids of East India were built by the Chola kingdom. The name of their kingdom is similar to Cholula, Mexico, a great city of the Aztecs, which consisted of the Great Cholula Pyramid. The term Chola is in general an Aztec word. East Indian mathematics that they learned from the Americans later on passed into the Achaemenid Empire. This was later introduced to the Arabs and later to the Romans until the entire Eastern Hemisphere knew complex mathematics. The Mayans gave to East India the concept of the legend of Yapan. In Mayan religion, this was a man favored by the gods because he was able to resist all temptation of woman and remain celibate. In Hindu culture, there is Ayyapan, whose story is identical.
It must also be noted that the Mayan character Yapan was also pronounced Japan, just like the East Asian country, which just so happens to be much closer to America than India, Myanmar, or Cambodia. Even if you go to Wikipedia and research Ayyapan of Hinduism, you will see that the word Ayyapan is not an Indian word, and it in fact originated from somewhere else.
In fact, primary sources such as the American Nations Volume 1 states on page 26, thus it is a positive fact that many ancient nations of the East, such as Libyans, Moors, Etruscans, Phoenicians, Hindus, etc., have heard of America or knew nearly as much of it as we did of Australia and Polynesia 100 years ago. This book was written in 1836, and it's saying those other nations on the East knew about America just as much as we, the Europeans, knew about Australia and Polynesia 100 years ago. Well, Australia and Polynesia was discovered by the white man in the 1600s. So 100 years ago, for the writer, they would have already known about Australia and about the Polynesian islands. So the East always have known of America. The discovery of this continent in 1492 is a great lie. Furthermore, the book then goes on to state this: the Americas had long before Columbus large cities built of stone, bricks, or wood, with walls, ditches, temples, palaces, some of which were of immense size and population. One of them, Otolim near Palenque, was 28 miles long, equal to Thebes, Babylon, and Kinoj in size and monuments. Nearly all ancient sciences and useful primitive arts were known in America, as well as all commerce and navigation, symbolic and alphabetic writing, nearly all Asiatic religions, etc. The most civilized nations had even colleges and universities, canals and paved roads, splendid temples and monuments. Did you hear that? The Americas had nearly all Asiatic religions. Hinduism is an Asiatic religion, is it not? The Mayans gave to East India meditation and yoga, but one of its most important things they gave to East India is Mexican corn or maize, which can be seen on several of their statues. The first place in mainland Southeast Asia that the Mayans would have came into contact with is the Cambodia region. In the country of Cambodia, we see some of the most Mayan-like pyramids outside of the Americas. And even if we look at the people of Cambodia, we can see through their phenotype that they look more Hispanic than any other group of Asians in general. Because Hispanics are a mixture between indigenous tribes, Europeans, and Asians, just like the people of Cambodia. We know the people of Cambodia have European and Asian DNA, but do they also have American indigenous DNA, giving them the ever so striking appearance of the modern Hispanic? Now, if you even look in the name of the country of Myanmar toward the west of Cambodia, you can clearly see that it actually has the term Mayan inside of the name, which is just another clue that maybe the Mayans had contact with Southeast Asia. The Cambodian and Mayan languages are also closely related. Both languages belong to the Austronesian family, which includes languages spoken throughout the Pacific region. This is more proof that the Pacific Islanders originated from the Americas and not from Africa. And we know what the Pacific Islanders look like, and if they came from America, what did the indigenous Americans look like? Cambodian and Mayan are also both tonal languages, meaning that the pitch of a syllable can change its meaning. The close genetic and linguistic relationship between the Cambodian and Mayan people is evidence of an ancient connection between the two cultures. The Israelites traded with Tarshish during the days of Solomon. The popular belief is that Tarshish is in Spain, but this is more than likely false due to the fact that monkeys, ivory, and peacocks cannot be sourced from Spain like scripture specifically states. Many scholars associate Tarshish with Sri Lanka or Southeast Asia, and this makes way more sense. Isaiah 23:6 calls Tarshish an island. This means it could be Sri Lanka, but more than likely the Philippines. The ivory would have been sourced from the Southeast Asian mainland before making its way to the Philippines. And the Israelites traded with these nations, crossing the Great Sea, which is the Pacific, over to the land of Tarshish in southeastern Asia. And the Israelites lived in the western part of North America. This is their splendid land.
In the book, Myths of Pre-Columbian America, on page 7 of the preface, at the last paragraph it states, like the Buddhists of India, China, and Japan, and like the ancient Gauls, the Aztecs of Mexico accumulated precious metals and precious stones and ornaments made of these in symbolic shapes to increase their store of religious influence or merit. Throughout this volume, many links are traced between the Old and New Worlds, but none is more remarkable than that afforded by the American story of Japan, which so closely resembles in all its essential features a characteristic Hindu myth found in the Mahabharata. With that piece of evidence alone, a good circumstantial case is made out for the transference to pre-Columbian America of Hindu modes of thought, Hindu myths and deities, and Hindu religious practices, colored somewhat by the influences to which they had been subjected on the way between India and America and after being localized in the New World.
Now, the writer is trying to suggest that it was Southeast Asia that brought this influence to the Americas, but we know that's not true because the Mayas, for example, their civilization is 3,000 years old. But when we get into Cambodia and India, when we're dealing with the Angkor Kingdom and the Chola Kingdom, these kingdoms are only 900 years old. So it's impossible for Southeast Asia to bring that type of technology and civilization to the Mayans and the Aztecs, because the Mayans and the Aztecs are much older than anything in Southeast Asia.
Now, on the first page of the first chapter, it even goes as far as to correlate pre-Columbian American mythology with Buddhism. This entire book is a highly recommended read, and you can find a lot more information on the connections between Southeast Asia, India, and the Americas. Now, another remarkable piece of evidence that shows the Mayans did in fact come in contact with the Indians of East India is the fact that in many of their artworks and depictions, as well as many of their carvings, they portray the Indian elephant, which of course did not live in America.
Now, North America did have a type of elephant called the mastodon, but the mastodon is completely covered in fur and does not have dots on the trunk like the Indian elephant does, and like the elephant presented in Mayan art does.
When we research the history of the number zero, which gave way to complex mathematics, we can see that the number zero actually started in Mesopotamia, specifically Babylon, around 5,000 years ago. Now, we know, I have an entire series about this, that Babylon is indeed in America. Sumeria and Mesopotamia is indeed in America. So yes, American society, American civilization invented the number zero. Now, the second people to invent the number zero were the Mayans. Now, the Mayans invented it around the 4th century AD. Now, it was later devised in India in the mid 5th century and spread to Cambodia near the 7th century AD and into China and the Islamic countries at the end of the 8th century. Zero reached Europe in the 12th century. So zero started in America. Complex mathematics started in America. It then went through Asia and made its way to Europe. So how did it start in America and just get into Eastern Asia? There was travel, there was trade, and there was exploration of other countries beyond the sea. And these were initiated by the American indigenous people. From childhood, we were taught that the American indigenous people were these brainless savages. Because when we realized the amount of technology, resources, and knowledge that this people had, it would then make us scratch our head and wonder what else lies in the American continent. Another thing that must be noted is the fact that yoga also was practiced in the Aztec and Mayan cultures. If we go and look at some of the Mayan and Aztec art, we can see them performing several popular yoga positions. It's also evident that they knew about meditation as well. Not only the Aztecs and the Mayans knew about meditation, but it's also clear when we look at mound builder artifacts from Illinois that the mound builders also practiced meditation. Just like in the Hebrew scriptures, the Hebrews practiced meditation as well. So meditation in general is an American practice. The Mayans had a 7-headed snake deity. This was the snake goddess. In Hinduism, we see the exact same goddess, and not one thing is different. She has 7 heads of a snake. She's wearing a necklace. She's sitting on flowers. And the entire imagery is the exact same imagery that we see in Mayan art. Now, the Mayans were truly the children of Mizraim because their written language was very similar, if not identical, to hieratic Egyptian in Northeast Africa. You know who else is Mizraim? The ancient civilization that dwelt along the Grand Canyon. Since the Mayans and whatever civilization dwelt along the Grand Canyon were actually one people, Mizraim, it wouldn't even be a stretch to say that the Grand Canyon civilization, which was also Mizraim, traded with Asia as well, which makes sense as to why in 1909 they found a Buddhist statue in the Kincaid's Cave of the Grand Canyon.
And my final piece of evidence that shows that the Americans did indeed trade with the Polynesians and the Asians is the fact that sweet potatoes, which originate from Central and South America, can also be found growing in the islands of the Pacific as well as Southeastern Asia. These sweet potatoes had to be traded by seafaring peoples originating from the Americas, since sweet potatoes are an American indigenous plant. In the book Sacred Mysteries Among the Mayas and the Quinches, it says, "I will endeavor to show you that the ancient sacred mysteries, the origin of Freemasonry, consequently date back from a period far more remote than most sanguine students of its history ever imagined. I will try to trace their origin step by step to this continent which we inhabit, to America, from where the Maya colonists transported their ancient religious rites and ceremonies not only to the banks of the Nile, but to those of the Euphrates and the shore of the Indian Ocean, not less than 11,500 years ago." Now, I wouldn't say 11,500 years ago. That's too extreme. You know, it was far more recent than that. But as you can see, the author clearly says that the Mayans brought their religious rites to the coast of the Indian Ocean. That means to India. In another video coming soon in the future, I will explain why the Solomon Islands of the Pacific Ocean got their name, and I will explain their connection with the nation of Israel in Western North America. If you like to build your ruach or your spirit, you must like to build your health as well. Check out our website, J&R Eden Herbs, for all your holistic needs. We have over 100 quality products that include supplements, teas, soaps, incenses, tonics, and more at very affordable prices. Click our link in the description to heal yourself today.